Hi class, in this video we're going to be talking about uh, changes in the aggregate labor market when there are short-run fluctuations or basically just the normal ebbs and flows in the business cycle. We'll talk about recessions and then the recovery period after the recessions. So the goal, just to be clear, the goal of this video is to see how the changes in primarily the demand for labor are going to occur in the aggregate labor market when there's changes to the overall economy, specifically when we enter in a recession and then the recovery process from that recession. So before we actually talk about the actual aggregate labor market and start doing some modeling in the aggregate labor market, just want to point out a couple theories that we're going to be leaning on to help us understand what's going to happen in the labor market. The first theory that we're going to talk about is this real business cycle theory. And the basic idea behind real business cycle theory is that technology is a primary driver of productivity and the economy overall. We talked about that a little bit when we talked about the aggregate production function and how the aggregate production function is largely dependent upon the scaling effect of technology, or basically how much technology there is in the economy. So those countries with more technological advancements are going to see more overall growth in the real GDP. The second theory that we're going to talk about is Keynesian theory, and primarily we'll be using Keynesian theory to talk about and understand the multiplying effect of a recession. So once we enter a recession, or if we see a negative shock, usually there's a after effect, there's a multiplying effect, and we pull that from this John Maynard Keynes and his theory, his Keynesian theory that's associated with that. The last theory that we're going to be talking about is this financial and monetary theory proposed by Milton Friedman, and that's going to be largely dealing with interest rates and changes to the money supply and how that will change, cause changes in demand for labor, cause changes in inflation, and possibly even cause changes in the supply of labor. So those are three theories we'll be talking about. They're listed in the PowerPoint. They go in a little bit more explanation and more detail in the PowerPoint presentation, but they're the three that we're going to be talking about. I just want to make sure you're aware of where these ideas are coming from. So typically, what kicks off a recession is what economists like to label a shock, a negative shock to the economy. And this negative shock can be a number of things. It could be wars, it could be pessimism from the people in the society or in the country overall. It could be productivity changes, technology changes, it could be a number of different things. What it is doesn't so much matter, but what it causes really does. So one of the four things that could possibly happen, and it could be just one of these things could cause the recession, or it could be all four. The first of these is output prices decreasing, and one and two kind of go hand in hand together, because if demand for a good is going to decrease, it's going to be followed by a decrease in prices. So one and two go hand in hand together, but the idea is that demand and then therefore prices of output, the price that firms receive from buyers for a good, goes down, decreases. And the reason that can lead to a negative shock, because if firms aren't receiving as much revenue because the prices have lowered for the good that they're selling, if that goes down, well, there's less incentive for firms to hire more workers. So if demand decreases for a firm's good and that causes the price to decrease, essentially workers become less valuable to the firm. Their marginal product of labor could stay exactly the same, but because the revenue that they're generating from the products that they're selling decreases, those workers have less value to the firm. The second or the third fallout from a negative shock could be a decrease in labor productivity. And in that case, workers just become less productive, causing their value of their marginal product to drop because their marginal product is dropping. So these three decreases can all cause recessions, can all be the result of a negative shock that causes a recession in the economy. The other thing that can change is input prices. And specifically, just to emphasize, it's input prices, not output prices, not the price of the goods being sold, but rather the price of the labor and capital and raw materials that are used in the production process. Well, if that price goes up, it means it's more costly to produce goods. If it's more costly to produce a firm's goods, well, they may have to hire less workers, and you'll see a decrease in demand for labor. That's what we're going to talk about next, as we specifically explore the aggregate labor market. Before we do that, I want to tie together the aggregate labor market with the aggregate production function and show how decreases in employment will cause decreases in output.